We give thanks to God always for you all, remembering before our God and Father your work of faith and labor of love and steadfastness of hope in our Lord Jesus Christ. St. Paul's words to the Thessalonians in his first letter to them. There is no greater joy in my ministry as your primate than to travel this beloved church. In the last 6 years, I have visited almost every diocese, a few of them several times. I have visited many, many parishes, and I appreciate these invitations, the warmth of your welcome, and every opportunity to preach and preside among you. I especially enjoy those town hall gatherings when you ask the real questions you want addressed. I enjoy the fellowship that we share together over potluck dinners, and I'm deeply grateful for every assurance of your prayers for me week by week. En route home from diocesan and parish visits, I reflect on the things I've heard and seen. Beauty and good order in worship, joy and diligence in teaching the faith, love and devotion in pastoral care, generosity in outreach, and boldness in advocacy for what is just and right in the affairs of the world. Your ministry in communities along our coastlines, in hill country and lake districts, across the prairies and nestled in the mountains, in huge urban centers and in remote communities across Arctic tundra, make this Anglican Church of Canada what it is. Vast and very diverse, yet one in Christ and his gospel. I echo St. Paul's words. I give thanks to God always for you, remembering before our God and Father your work of faith and your labor of love and your steadfastness of hope in our Lord Jesus. I come to this General Synod filled with much hope for our church. Let me share a few snapshots with you. A couple of years ago, I was at St. James Cathedral in downtown Toronto for Tuesday drop-in in the third week of Advent. Because Cathedral Hall was under a massive renovation, Tuesday drop-in was to take place in the cathedral. To accommodate that program, all the pews in the north side of the cathedral had been removed, and a number of stations had been set up. 60 people thereabouts who live on the streets were welcomed by the vicar, David Brinton. Out of the cold, they could get a hot drink, a sandwich, and some fresh fruit. Yes, there was a barber in the cathedral cutting hair, and a number of nurses providing foot care. Scarves and hats and mittens were available. So were cards for those who wanted to wish family or friends a Merry Christmas. There was a festive atmosphere in the cathedral that day. Someone playing the piano and some gathering around to sing. Some just sat and enjoyed the music. I watched people gazing up at the painted ceiling or standing in front of a story in stained glass. I saw some sitting quietly with their heads bowed in prayer for mercies I can only imagine. At evensong, we sang the Magnificat. And I thought how in these very courts of the Lord, the hungry had been fed and the humble lifted high, the hope of the poor not forgotten. Let me take you to the East Coast, to St. John's, Newfoundland. There, the Anglo-Catholic parish of St. Michael and All Angels discerned a call a few years ago to relocate to the urban sprawl surrounding the downtown core of St. John's. A church plant in the making, a congregation growing, the church's presence felt in wonderful ways in a new part of town. In the inner city neighborhood of central Winnipeg, historic St. Matthew's Church is converting its massive old building into a multi-purpose complex called the West End Commons. It will have a beautiful worship space, 25 units of affordable rental housing for families, and a neighborhood resource center. All of this exciting work in the spirit of their parish prayer. Let our church be like a great tree, giving shade and shelter to all who come under its branches. Let the people rest here in your grace, and let them be rerooted in your kingdom's work. On the West Coast, the Diocese of British Columbia, under the guidance of Bishop Jim Cowan, has completely remapped itself for mission. That work in Synod was not without some struggle, some pain, and some grief. But overall, the strategy of hubs for mission and ministry is moving the church forward. Last year, I was at the Synod of the Diocese of the Arctic, and what a time that was. The famous igloo cathedral, St. Jude's, which had been completely destroyed by fire in November 2005 and rebuilt through the generosity of Anglicans across the country, was dedicated once again to the glory of God. A northern light rekindled. 2 new bishops, David Parsons and Darren McCartney, were elected and consecrated, all within the 8 days of the Synod. The complete translation of the Scriptures into Inuktitut was celebrated. Local translators working with the Canadian Bible Society presented their 33-year labor of love to Bishop Andrew Tagatalik. The Bibles were blessed and distributed, and as one woman received her copy, she literally danced down the aisle saying, "God speaks my language." Earlier this year, I visited the Diocese of New Westminster. It was styled by the bishop's missioner for St. Matthew's, Abbotsford, St. Matthias, and St. Luke, and St. John Shaughnessy as a pastoral visit, one in which the primate would take opportunity to meet the people, to hear their story, and to pray with them. Listening to them, I felt their heartache over the intense divisions that marked their congregations for so many years, and their pain in seeing so many leave their churches, among them family members and friends. There was a sadness in some of our conversation, but there was no contempt, no malice, no animosity. They spoke of their desire to remain within the diocesan family and within this church. They also spoke of their respect for their Bishop Michael Ingham and for the great care he had taken to represent the diocese in court, for the clear and courteous manner with which he articulated our polity as a church and our fiduciary responsibility in holding all properties dedicated for the ministries of the Anglican Church of Canada. In each one of those 3 gatherings, I heard a deep resolve not to rebuild what was, but to plant something new, a new way of being church, trusting that with careful nurture and watering, God will give them growth. These are people of hope. Let me take you now to the Diocese of Moosonee. When Bishop Tom Corsten retires at the end of the year, Moosonee will come under the jurisdiction of the Metropolitan of the Province of Ontario. This is a story of courageous Episcopal leadership. It's a story of focused conversations in Synod and of faithful assessment of a church's capacity to sustain ministry through the vast expanse of that huge diocese. It's a story of emerging partnerships that will provide for all the administrative, pastoral, and episcopal needs of the church there. The lights are not going out in Moosonee. They're twinkling with renewed hope. Moving westward, I see another story of hope in the Diocese of Keewatin. In the spirit of honoring the desire of Indigenous peoples for self-determination with respect to leadership and structures within the churches and their communities, an area mission was created in Northern Ontario, and the church made provision for the election of a bishop in keeping with Aboriginal ways of discernment. Through the leadership of Bishop Lydia Mamakwe, the Northern Ontario mission has so grown in its capacity for self-determination and self-sufficiency that this synod will be asked to give consent to the creation of a new diocese in Northern Ontario. Hope abounds in these First Nations communities, the dream of the elders taking on flesh and bone, soul and spirit. In Saskatchewan, a hope was realized in the election of an Indigenous bishop to work with the diocesan bishop. Their partnership in ministry is a wonderful reflection of Manui Isi Miwachimowowan. How'd I do, Michael? Meaning together in the gospel. Bishop Michael Hawkins and Bishop Adam Halkett are living the prayer of the faithful across the diocese and inviting everyone to join them. O great Spirit, grant us strength and dignity to walk a new trail. Now let me take you into the interior of British Columbia. At the time the Diocese of Caribou was going bankrupt through litigation arising from abuses in the Indian residential schools, the then Bishop, Jim Cruikshank, through tears of his own, said, "No self-pity, no blaming." He called the church to reimagine itself without all the usual structures of governance we know. Through Jim's leadership and the guidance of the Chancellor, Bud Smith, APSI struggled into life, that is, the Anglican parishes of the central interior. Their first few gasps of breath were a struggle, but now it is enjoying a life and vitality that is quite amazing. I was in Kamloops just a few weeks ago to present Bud Smith with the Anglican Award of Merit for his outstanding commitment to help APSI walk in new ways with Indigenous peoples. At the same service, at Bud's request, Bishop Barbara Andrews installed 4 pastoral elders, Jim, Laura, Amy, and Jimmy. All received crosses and blankets, and to the beat of drum songs, spirits soared. APSI is a story of a people whose mourning has been turned into dancing. Hope abounds. I was in the Diocese of Edmonton for Pentecost this year, convinced that the believers should all be in one place, devoting themselves to praise and prayer and expecting a fresh outpouring of the Holy Spirit. Bishop Jane Alexander invited all the parishes to come together in the beautiful Windspear Center Concert Hall. 1,300 Anglicans came from across the diocese, and what a gathering it was, launching the diocese into its centenary celebrations. There was a good spirit in that place, a sweet, sweet spirit, and everyone knew it was the Spirit of the Lord. Now, friends, these are just a sampling of so many places where I see hope in and through the church local. I also see a lot of hope in how we are the church together across the country. In General Synod, and this is our 40th in our history, here we are reconnected. We are reminded of our identity as a national church. The most incredible way in which we are the church together is our deep and abiding commitment to the marks of mission. I know you know them. I rejoice that these marks of mission tell, teach, tend, transform, treasure. That's the most abbreviated form I've found them in yet. They've become household language in this church. They're part of the heartbeat of this church. Parishes and dioceses are using them in their ministry plans. A Sunday school curriculum has been built around them. The Anglican Journal has featured mission stories from across the church. Anglican Video has captured mission moments with friends throughout the country. There's been a photo contest. A song has been written. These marks of mission have inspired all the conversations that shape the priorities and practices within Vision 2019, adopted by General Synod in 2010, as a guiding document for the Council of General Synod in shaping and resourcing the ministries of the national church. Both the marks of mission and Vision 2019 will be showcased in this synod, and I know you're going to be energized by the go-forward enthusiasm that marks the spirit and pace of these dynamic presentations. There is in our church a clear shift, I think, from the culture of membership to a culture of discipleship. We talk about ourselves being a people seeking to know, love, and follow Jesus in serving God's mission in the world. Jesus is at the heart of that statement. Some humility comes out of our hearts as we say we're seeking, we're learning, we're growing, we're maturing, we're aging like good wine. We're moving, we're being formed and reformed for discipleship. There is, writes Bishop Mark MacDonald, a new sense of vocation in the church, a calling to a level of individual and corporate discipleship that has not been common in the period of late Christendom. It's a discipleship in which the whole church develops a capacity for humble and constant spiritual discernment. Humble, constant spiritual discernment. That prayerful listening for God's word in Scripture, in one another, and in creation. In a recent publication of the World Council of Churches, The Church Toward a Common Vision, we read, "At the heart of the church's vocation in the world is the proclamation of the kingdom, inaugurated in Jesus the Lord, crucified and risen. Through its internal life of Eucharistic worship, intercessory prayer, through planning for mission and evangelism, and through a daily lifestyle of solidarity with the poor, through advocacy even to confrontation with the powers that oppress human beings, the churches are trying to fulfill this essential evangelistic vocation." In the past triennium, the Primate's Commission on Theological Education has focused its work on competencies for presbyteral ministry. The report sets before us the qualities, skills, and charisms we can reasonably expect in those called and ordained to priestly ministry. It's an impressive piece of work, and I believe it holds great hope for consistency of standards across the church. I trust the Synod will heartily endorse the report and its several recommendations. We're also turning our attention to the diaconate, as we have had in the past. This distinct order of ministry, I want to say, is a precious gift, and it's a powerful agent in the call to be a servant church in and for the world. In my travels, I have seen the incredibly amazing ministries of deacons on the streets, in shelters for the homeless, in safe houses, in hospitals, prisons, and halfway houses, and inside the legal aid system. But in its fullness, diaconia takes the form not only of compassionate care and accompaniment, but also prophetic witness and advocacy for human rights, social, cultural, and economic. The tremendous economic inequalities that plague the human family need to be an abiding concern for the church. Our faith impels us to work for a just social order. Commitment to that work represents hope for millions of people. In engaging youth, we work together across the church. My experience, and I know it's yours, that wherever young people gather, in diocesan youth conferences, in Stronger Together, at Ask or Imagine, or at a 1,000-strong Canadian Lutheran Anglican youth event, they are eager to use their faith to reshape this world in the design of God's love and justice for all people. This fall, the BCYAYM, British Columbia and Yukon Anglican Youth Movement, the oldest continuing youth movement in our church, celebrates its 100th anniversary in a gala event in Abbotsford. This will not be a recalling of the glory days of the past, but a genuine celebration of the new thing the Lord continues to do in making this youth movement as strong and vibrant as ever. With the theme, Bridging the Generations, they are moving on. The Council of the North describes our being together as a church this way. Nowhere in the Canadian church is the interdependence in the gospel more evident than in the way in which we work together to provide pastoral and sacramental ministry to the remote and isolated areas of our vast nation. I want us to pause and pay tribute to all those who serve in the North. The bishops, the clergy, the lay readers, and catechists. While all our ministries across the church are sacrificial in nature, those who serve in the North make particular sacrifices. They live with challenges in geography, huge distances between communities, issues associated with isolation, the high cost of food, particularly perishable food, and numerous social challenges. Bishops and clergy in the Council of the North receive a bare minimum stipend. Many clergy, no stipend. I can only stand in awe of their deep devotion to our Lord and their labors of love among those they serve. As beautiful as the stars that light up the night sky, so are their ministries across a northern landscape, each one a story of hope. More than ever, dear friends, more than ever, we are together as a church in walking with Indigenous peoples. I believe we're making good progress in the journey of spiritual renewal to which the 1994 covenant called us. We are walking that dream. We've some distance to go, but even as we look back, there are some wonderful moments we can celebrate. I have had the privilege to be a guest at the last couple of sacred circles. As you heard me say yesterday in Joint Assembly, my role there is to listen. And what I hear is an emerging hope. I hear it in conversations over meals, in stories by the sacred fire, and in discussions under the tent. An emerging hopefulness among Indigenous peoples, an emerging hopefulness for the way we are endeavoring to walk together in paths of healing and reconciliation and new life. I think that hope is shaped by what many see as a deep commitment on the part of our church to live as faithfully as we can the words of the apology delivered by Archbishop Michael Piers in 1993. This year marks the 20th anniversary of that apology. having taken initiative to seek the counsel of the National Indigenous Anglican Bishop and the guidance of the Anglican Council of Indigenous People as to how we mark this anniversary, I've been advised that in keeping the anniversary, two things should be considered. First, an opportunity to pay tribute to Archbishop Pearse for his leadership, which was truly humble and holy, compassionate and courageous, far-sighted and firm. Michael set us on a trajectory toward healing and reconciliation from which we have not, nor ever will, turn back. The second piece of advice I was given was that a commission be established by me to enable our church to follow through on the actions associated with the resolution of General Synod 2010 repudiating the doctrine of discovery. Having considered this request, I'm quite prepared to act in establishing a commission, but I've prayerfully discerned that the mandate be broadened so that it addresses not only the doctrine of discovery, but two other very important matters as well. First, the question that Mr. Justice Murray Sinclair, chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, has put before the churches and all the parties to the settlement agreement: what is reconciliation? And the second piece that I want to add to the mandate will help focus our attention on the Church's commitment to addressing long-standing injustices borne by Indigenous peoples in Canada. So I see that mandate as, in some respects, addressing something from the past, the doctrine of discovery, the legacy of colonialism, and all that represents in history. I see us in the moment of the present as we struggle with understanding, embracing a wholesome theology of reconciliation, and then moving forward together, embodying that theology. And thirdly, looking ahead, because the reality is that sometimes when it comes to talk of reconciliation, it only becomes genuine on our part when at the same time we're taking initiatives to address what's still systemic in terms of racism in our society. In establishing the commission, I will seek the advice of our Chancellor, the National Indigenous Anglican Bishop, the Coordinator for Indigenous Ministries, the Reverend Jenny Doctor, in drafting terms of reference. I will ask ASIP for guidance in naming the commissioners, and I pledge my prayers from this moment on for the sacred work that will be entrusted to them, and I'll request a final report for General Synod 2016. Since General Synod in 2010, our church has been deeply engaged in supporting the work of Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. At every event I have attended, I have been overwhelmed by the stories shared by survivors of the schools. I've learned a lot about the impact of their experiences in their own lives, those of their families, their children and grandchildren. I come away from every one of those events so mindful of so many years of lost love. But I also come away with moments of joy that by their very nature are healing, moments that signal hope for a brighter future. At all the TRC events, gestures of reconciliation are offered by churches, community-based agencies, government services, and more recently by schools and universities who are committed to include in their history courses the story of the Indian residential schools. One of the most moving of these gestures was at the Quebec National event in Montreal held in April. It was the presentation of a suitcase by a survivor from northern Quebec. The very suitcase he took with him to residential school. Most of what he had taken to school was taken from him. And he described taking home that suitcase empty, but in a sense, overflowing with hurt and loss and anger and grief. But through the years, he's emptied it of those things. And in it, he has placed, as he said, with the support of his church and community, symbols of personal healing and reconciliation with others, signs of hope, including the apology by Michael Pierce. Just think about that suitcase. It was a powerful moment in that national event, one rich in every hope that in remembering the children, this country will be guided on a new and a different path. This synod will feature a number of stories of how the General Synod and the dioceses are partnered in a variety of ministries. One of the oldest, of course, is the relationship of the Journal and the diocesan newspapers. One of the more recent is the National Together in Mission initiative. A number of dioceses are engaged in feasibility studies, a few in developing a case for support, including ministries of the General Synod. Ottawa and Toronto dioceses have had their own very successful financial campaigns from which the General Synod has enjoyed generous support, and I thank you. All of the dioceses are benefiting from the ministry of our regional plan-giving consultants, their work being borne by a cost-sharing arrangement with General Synod. At the call of General Synod 2010 to explore a government relations presence in Ottawa, General Synod and the Diocese of Ottawa have partnered in the appointment of a special advisor for government relations. This office, held by the Reverend Lorette Glasgow, has been of great help in assisting me and other church host staff to address government on matters of poverty in Canada, chaplaincy within federal prisons, health benefits for refugees, changes in immigration policies, global food security, climate change, and the 1,000-day countdown to the realization of the Millennium Development Goals in 2015. This office is enabling me to exercise a stronger prophetic voice on behalf of our church. Faith, Worship, and Ministry has networks in liturgy, theological education, congregational development, and ecumenism all across the country. The treasurer of General Synod gathers all the financial officers in a meeting every couple of years. They've proven to be helpful with respect to exchange around best practices. The chancellor of General Synod hosted a meeting of all the provincial and diocesan chancellors at their own expense this year, reflecting on their work in serving the bishops and synods of our church. Staff who work in communication are in constant contact with one another across the church. Through General Synod's Creation Matters Working Group, about 40 parishes across the country are engaged in church energy audits, greening Anglican spaces, and cultivating church lands for community gardens, supplying fresh produce for local food banks. General Synod 2010 requested me to convene a national consultation to identify desirable changes in the structures of the General Synod, enabling us to effectively carry out our national and international ministries. That consultation was held in January this year and facilitated by Janet Marshall. The findings were considered by a steering group chaired by Monica Patton, and their report, entitled Embodying God's Call, is before this synod with a number of resolutions. May I simply say that I believe that the overall direction of doing more of our work through task forces and commissions with very clearly defined mandates, timelines, and measurable results is wise counsel for this General Synod. Under the theme of working together across the Church, I would be remiss if I did not note that within the past 3 years, there has been a concerted effort with good success to increased collaboration among all the related entities in the ministries of our Church. The General Synod, the Anglican Foundation, the Primate's World Relief and Development Fund, and the Pension Office. A wonderful expression of this growing collaboration is the Gifts for Mission catalog. It is clear that more and more people appreciate this opportunity to support ministries of the Church that are particularly close to their heart. The Anglican Foundation takes a great interest in new and innovative ways of being church, in theological education, in worship, the sacred arts, and in making our buildings accessible, in resourcing youth initiatives, and supporting our church's public witness for justice and peace. With its vision for a truly just, healthy, and peaceful world, Primate's World Relief and Development has a very close relationship with our global relations staff, carefully mapping where our church is at work in the world and joining forces in advocacy for human rights. This growing collaboration also finds its expression in the way in which the senior staff of the General Synod and its related entities are working together. I am so blessed, and so are you, to have Michael Thompson as our General Secretary. Michael brings incredible gifts to this office: wisdom, wit, writing ability. And I'm grateful that Michael and I are surrounded by directors who are so dedicated to the work that is before them. People who give sacrificially of their time to make this church and this General Synod what it can be for the world. I'm also deeply grateful for the wonderful support that Michael and I have enjoyed in these last few years from the officers of the General Synod. Their collective role and responsibility, as outlined in the handbook, has been enfleshed in wonderful ways as they work very closely with Michael and me and with all our General Synod directors. As hopeful as I am for the ways we are working in the Church local and the Church national, I'm also hopeful for the Church global. 18 of our dioceses remain in companion relationships across the communion. The General Synod has historic relationships with a number of provinces: the Philippines, the Solomon Islands, Cuba, Jerusalem, and the Conference of Anglican Provinces in Africa. I want to highlight our abiding commitment to the Church in Cuba. The Primate chairs the Metropolitan Council. Global relations staff visit frequently. We support a number of faculty positions at the seminary in Matanzas. We are supporting an annual diocesan-wide music camp. We assist that diocese with clergy stipends, and we're working with the Episcopal Church to secure an adequate pension plan for retired clergy. A visit by one of our PWRDF staff persons, Jose Zaratas, led to a proposal for a development office for the Diocese of Cuba. PWRDF and Episcopal Relief and Development have partnered in making grants to fund this office for 3 years. The development officer is working with Bishop Griselda and her leadership team to assist parishes with community development initiatives. Our national relationship with Cuba is complemented by a growing relationship with the Diocese of Niagara, centered in agricultural initiatives. Bishop Griselda has been in many parts of Canada. She is an excellent ambassador, a woman of vision, and a woman of unwavering hope in God's purposes for the Church in and through Cuba. You'll recall the General Synod 2010 called for a strengthening of ties with the Diocese of Jerusalem in the Middle East. And it gives me great delight to see how the companion relationship with Ottawa continues to flourish. I'm pleased to note that our church has made a generous commitment to provide for the next 3 years the stipend for the Reverend Canon John Organ, who is serving as chaplain to Bishop Suhail Dewani. John is a retired chaplain of the Canadian Forces and a priest of our church. His ministry in Jerusalem is well received. And I'm also pleased to say that the number of Canadian companions of Jerusalem, individuals, parishes, and dioceses, is growing. As companions, we are eager to learn more about the Church's work in the Holy City, in the West Bank, Gaza, Jordan, Israel, Lebanon, and Syria. We are committed to support the Church's witness through their priorities in hospitality, healthcare, education, and reconciliation for lasting peace. All of these developments give such great hope to Christians in the Holy Land. They long for relationship with their brothers and sisters in Christ throughout the world. Historically, we've enjoyed wonderful partnerships with a number of provinces through Africa. But we have also known the pain of considerable strain in some of those relationships, notably over matters of sexuality. But one of the signs of great hope for renewed relations is the Canadian-African Bishops' Dialogue. Assuming friendship in Christ, these bishops, respecting diversity in theological perspective and a commitment to learn about the cultural context in which they're serving the people of God, they come together for conversations. And those conversations continue to be marked by grace, goodwill, and growth in Jesus. I'm convinced that in no small way, Canadian-African Bishops' Dialogue is contributing to what I see as a renewed humility and hope around the Anglican communion. A good number of Canadian Anglicans give extraordinary leadership in the communion, and we thank the Reverend Kenneth Kieran for acknowledging that in his remarks this morning. Alison Burnett Cowan, the Director of Unity, Faith, and Order, our delegates to the Anglican Consultative Council, Suzanne Lawson, Peter Elliott, and Sue Moxley, and a host of others serving on communion-wide commissions for liturgy, evangelism, church growth, theological education, and communication, on ecumenical dialogues, in networks empowering women's ministries, Indigenous peoples' ministries, healthcare and the environment, and on those serving the Alliance for Anglican Relief and Development agencies. This year marks the 50th anniversary of the Great Anglican Congress held in Toronto in 1963. From that great gathering of Anglicans worldwide emerged the principle of mutual responsibility and interdependence in the body of Christ. It has been reaffirmed time and again through the Anglican Consultative Council and expanded into the 10 principles of partnership adopted in 1993. These principles continue to enshrine the ethos and guide the way in which we work together across the world. As the life and witness of our communion goes forward, we are deeply grateful for the new Archbishop of Canterbury's passion for evangelism and renewal, his commitment to reconciliation and building up the body of Christ, and his principled approach to faith in the public square. In the bonds of affection we share in our Lord, we uphold Archbishop Justin in our prayers day by day. As Anglicans across Canada and around the world, we do well, it seems to me, to remember that wherever we are but pieces of clay. Pieces of clay in the hands of the potter, the Holy One, whose design is to make of this church a vessel of grace and blessing in and for the world. I am coming to Synod with a lot of hope. And I pray that you will feel something of that hope I feel, and that you will be able to carry it home to all those places where you faithfully seek to love and serve the Lord. The songwriter, Colin Gibson, puts our life in Christ ever so simply, yet fully. He came singing hope, and he lived singing hope. He died singing hope. He arose in silence. For the hope to go on, we must make it our song. You and I be the singers.
He came singing love, and he lived singing love. He died singing love. He arose in silence. For the love to go on, we must make it our song. You and I be the singers. He came singing faith, and he lived singing faith. He died singing faith. He arose in silence. For the faith to go on, we must make it our song. You and I be the singers.